board, or like, you know, handing out the worksheets to the students. I just love doing that. And then as I got older, I was tutoring because I'm the oldest, so I have so many younger cousins and siblings, and I just remember tutoring them and helping them with their homework. And then like my first part-time job was tutoring calculus. So it's just a natural thing that I think I do really well.
Okay, great. Is there anything that I should ask you which I have not asked you? The meaning of life.
Oh my God. We'll save that for a different
Yeah.
day.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, Margarita.
Yeah, no problem. Have a nice
Okay,
day.
take care now. Bye-bye. Okay, so I put a link to her Substack and her Twitter in the video description.
Candidates as only masquerading, not really intending to commit to the halachic lifestyle they promise to maintain. See, for example, how in the following satirical sketch, the comedian presents the common wisdom according to which Orthodox conversion entails a false and only temporary religious transformation. Since conversion is performed in front of the gatekeeper's eyes, so goes the logic, it is inevitably exposed as an empty act once the rabbis are not looking anymore.
Hello and good evening to all the strange workers here in the studio and at home who are watching us.
Oh, sorry.
Today, you must understand what is the problem with the Jewish. You know, in Israel, we are a lot of Jewish, but there are three kinds of Jewish. They are simple Jewish that you see a lot in the street, medium Jewish, and very, very Jewish. The simple Jewish, like me, for example, we don't wear kippah on the head, okay, you know, kippah. The medium Jewish people wear a kippah that is knitted, you know. Now, the very, very Jewish, they wear a black hat, always black hat. Now, if you, okay, for example, you are not Jewish, and you want to become, like me, for example, simple Jewish, you must first become very, very Jewish, and only after, when the rabbis are not looking, you become simple Jewish.
That's pretty good routine here. So this is an Israeli
These
professor
representations
of
further
political
intensify
anthropology.
when referring to converts like Moran, Israeli citizens with a background of immigration from the FSU, most of whom seem to lack religious inclinations. The perception that converts from FSU backgrounds lie during their conversion process permeates Israeli public spheres.
Okay, so this is Michal. She is a professor of political anthropology in Israel. She published a book in 2017 called When the State Winks, the Performance of Jewish Conversion in Israel. So she talks about the core tensions in Israel. It's both a secular state and a Jewish state. So in the early 2000s, an Orthodox Zionist rabbi proposed the enactment of conversion en masse because tens of thousands of putative Jews who escaped from the Soviet Union circa 1989, 1990, 1991, they were not halakhically Jewish. They were not Jewish. They just had some relative who was Jewish or who they said was Jewish. So Israel has hundreds of thousands of people from the former Soviet Union who are Israeli citizens, but they are not Jewish. What to do? So one prominent Orthodox Zionist rabbi, Rabbi Yoel ben Nun, proposed mass conversion must be carried out. Now, his plan was immediately rejected by other rabbis and policymakers because they said he completely disregarded the dominant halakhic, meaning Jewish law understanding of conversion as the sincere commitment of individuals to religious observance. So this rabbi insisted upon the existence of a national demographic crisis in Israel, so he justified doing mass conversions in the name of a quick single act of mass conversion. His proposal was oriented toward collective national goals and threatened to render hollow the whole conversion to Judaism ritual, sapping it of both its personal agency and religious sincerity. But remember, about 120,000 Ethiopians were brought to Israel. They were proclaimed Jews, but they had no common DNA with other Jews. They had no distinctive Jewish DNA. Also, their practice of Judaism was unlike anything known to Jews. So did these people just move to Israel and claim to be Jewish so that they could escape a difficult situation in Ethiopia? And to make sure of their Jewish bona fides, leading rabbis came by and performed mass conversions. All these Ethiopians had to go through mass conversions. So it's not like mass conversions have not happened before in Israel. Tens of thousands of Ethiopian Falashan, quote unquote, Jews received mass conversions. So as a religious ritual, the mass conversion sounds overly thin. It seems too direct, too crude, and too naked a demonstration of the state's national stakes in Jewish conversion. So he laid out his manifesto, Rabbi Yoel Ben Nun, in a 2003 article published in the Israeli magazine Eretz Chaheret under the provocative headline, "Mass Conversion Must Be Carried Out." So he said that Israel's got these tens of thousands of non-Jewish immigrants who arrived in Israel from the former Soviet Union. They arrived under the general auspices of the Israeli repatriation law. It was a fulfillment of the grand Zionist scheme of return to the promised land. Now, the state does not recognize these non-Jewish immigrants as Jews, but they are nonetheless absorbed as Israeli citizens. So these immigrants frequently identify and pass as Jews. They are generally well integrated into Israeli society. So he argues that there should be mass conversion. This is what he wrote. Worst of all, Jews will not only become a minority in greater Israel unless we do this mass conversion. That's already happening now. Jews will become a minority even in a contracted, shrunken state of Israel. The Jewish state might even turn into a Jewish autonomy, viable only by the grace of foreigners. The elders of the Haredi community will mock us and claim, "We told you so. After all, the writing was on the wall." All the enemies of Israel will rub their palms together in glee: the Palestinians, the radical Muslims, the anti-Semites of Europe, and the devout Christians. So he says the state of Israel must summon the political courage to carry out the mass conversion of non-Jewish former Soviet Union Olim immigrants to Israel from the former Soviet Union. So he said that the current Israeli state conversion system, which is manifested in a broad network of conversion institutions operating for some 2 decades under the aegis of the state of Israel, had failed to meet the portentousness of the moment. So the state's conversion efforts have been informed by the Zionist imperative to convert non-Jewish Olim immigrants on a large scale. So his colleagues in the rabbinic conversion courts, all Orthodox rabbis like himself, perform what he deems sacred work on behalf of the Jewish state while stretching the limits of Jewish conversion laws. So he claims, however, that the current conversion system simultaneously undermines prospective candidates and undermines itself because of its meticulous, unrealistic focus on religious obligations. So there are many schools of thought, even within Orthodox Judaism. What does it mean to convert to Judaism, and what does it mean to accept the commandments, Kabbalat HaMitzvot? So in some rabbis' interpretation, this means adherence to a specific Orthodox lifestyle. Now, this is what Rabbi Ben Nun said in 2006. "I want to talk about how we should cope with a mass multitude of Gentiles in our midst, those who are not Jewish by halakha, Jewish law, but nevertheless live amongst us. Maimonides states that anyone who is circumcised and has undergone ritual immersion is retroactively a convert. This is not to be undertaken a priori, but it is valid retroactively. I've been arguing for 15 years that the current situation in Israel is one that requires retroactive judgment. We will create an impressive moving ceremony on the eve of Yom Kippur or on Shavuot on the beach in Tel Aviv. Everyone will call out together, 'Hero Israel, Shema Yisrael.' We will do and we will obey, Naseh v'nishma, then sign a document before an authorized rabbinic court, and that's it. We could do this recurrently for 10 to 20 years and solve the problem." When I first introduced this idea, everyone looked at me as though I were crazy. But why? Conversion is an individual personal matter. But if we really want to solve this problem, we need to scale up and avoid insisting that non-Jewish olim accept the mitzvot, but rather inform them they already have. We need to do this as quickly as possible. So what makes Rabbi Ben Noon's idea so compelling is how, as a solution to a perceived national emergency, it simply renders the religious sincerity and the personal agency of potential converts immaterial. So the author here went to meet one woman who'd graduated from this conversion process, and she'd already traded in her skirt for jeans. So women I know who've gone through the conversion process to Orthodox Judaism, they've thrown out all their jeans. They only wear skirts. Now, after she got the conversion, she went back to wearing jeans, and she felt much freer in jeans and a tank top. And the first thing she did once she made it through the conversion process was she found some jeans and a tank top, and she put them on and walked outside. She hated the whole mikveh experience, the ritual bath. She arrived there depleted and angry, racked with ambivalence about the whole conversion process. Other converts share sometimes the excitement and joy they feel about the symbolic meaning of rebirth and repair and being accepted into the national fold, but others feel none of this. She hated submerging herself in that pea water. That water was just warm. Other women, found it just deeply spiritual. Then, after immersing herself in the mikveh, finishing the conversion process, she left the mikveh. She went straight home to shower. Then she went out for the first time in a long time in jeans and a t-shirt. I felt so happy. I felt liberated, as if I had shed a building 80 tons dropped from my shoulders. I didn't have to put on sunglasses, wear a wide-brimmed hat to disguise myself when I was wearing jeans. A huge joy. So there is a widespread perception that converts from a former Soviet Union background lie during their conversion process, and this is permeating Israel, this perception. So the Israeli press, social media, even the protocols of Israeli parliamentary committees all reinforce the idea that state conversion is an elaborate sham. These public debates are polyphonic. They encompass an array of ideological voices. Jewish Israeli citizens of all religious orientations think that these former Soviet Union immigrants are undergoing a sham conversion. They look upon the state conversion policy with great suspicion. So let's hear a little bit more about this from Michal.
In the social and
Rovi.
institutional context where the conversion process actually takes place, the settings of conversion schools, rabbinic courts, and ritual beth, where I conducted my study, the concepts of sincerity, deception, and lies constitute the chief concerns of all parties involved. During my fieldwork, this is what everybody talked about. To be sure, this kind of suspicion is not unique to the case of FSU converts in Israel. Concerns about convert sincerity and purity of heart, that is about whether they might be motivated less by religious intentions and more by political or material interest, animate a broad range of conversion contexts. What makes the discourses of suspicion so compelling in the context under hand is the fact that quite often they treat conversion agents as complicit in the insincerity of converts. On all sides of the religious map, ultra-Orthodox, liberal Orthodox, Reform, and secular Jews, critics contend that conversion agents help to maintain empty performances rather than expose deceptions. Some critics stress how conversion agents, all too eager to welcome non-Jewish immigrants into the Jewish fold and convert as many of them as possible, enable candidates to become impersonators. Other vocal critics emphasize how by imposing rigid and unrealistic religious criteria, Orthodox conversion agents leave candidates with no other choice but insincerity, thus solidifying the role of deceit within the conversion process. This public polyphonic critique of state conversion is often expressed through the metaphor of winking, depicting conversion as a mutually agreed upon and established arrangement of wink-wink. The rabbinic judges seemingly wink at the converts and invite them to wink back, that is, to lie. I draw on the metaphor of wink-wink conversions in order to conceptualize the relationships that emerge between conversion agents on the one hand and converts in the making on the other hand. In doing so, I would like to distance myself from the popular cynical association between lying and winking, to shy away from the hard distinction between sincere converts and deceivers. My central critique is not only that the conversion process should not be confined to a binary logic of truth and falsity, nor would I, as an ethnographer, presume to essentially know how to distinguish between truth and lies, a positioning that would problematically situate me above the social reality which I investigate. Most of all, such a distinction does not help us understand the relationships that unfold between converts and conversion agents. Instead of wink-wink conversion, I suggest the idea of wink-in relations. I suggest it as a way to explain how all sides in this encounter negotiate the incredibly challenging task of Jewish conversion under the current circumstances. The complexity is grounded in a set of three interrelated paradoxes. First, Orthodox conversion in Israel is politically constructed as a national mission, משימה לאומית, and as such, it is an inclusive, even missionary Zionist project aimed to secure Jewish demography. It is fully funded and operated by the state. It is marketed. See, for example, the commercials on the right side promoting conversion, encouraging non-Jewish Israelis to piece together the puzzle of their life by conversion. Or see the commercial at the left side, stating that conversion is achievable. Thus, the message is not only that we want you, we the state, but you can do it, just come along. But at the same time that conversion policy is inclusive and missionary, it is actualized by a generally exclusionary and quite stringent rabbinic toolbox of gatekeeping. Secondly, the state-run conversion project is informed by a biopolitical logic focused on the population and the reproduction of Jewish families, mostly through conversion of young women, as becomes very clear in these ads. At the same time, the daily labor of conversion is focused on the religious observance and sincerity of individuals, as if this labor is divorced from the scheme of the national mission. And finally, Orthodox conversion demands a profound religious commitment from people, but as a national mission directed at the FSU population, it targets those who generally come from secular or even atheist background. The unavoidable clash between all these incongruities weighs considerably on all parties involved. I suggest that win-win relations is the daily taxing labor of conversion, permitting all sides to work towards what is their shared goal, to facilitate and undergo conversion. As a cultural anthropologist, I obviously take winking quite seriously. In the most basic sense, winking is an interactive gesture which can create a shared understanding and invite each other to collaborate in the production of refined meaning. Winking contains an as-if quality, indicating that what is being said may have an additional meaning, that it reflects only a partial truth, and that much remains unsaid. It is not that converts learn how to lie and to feign piety. Rather, they learn how to construct and present a believable persona. And conversion agents not only orchestrate the convert's performances, they too must perform their professional personas as sincere gatekeepers. As much as candidates depend on these performances in order to achieve a successful conversion, conversion agents too depend on these performances in order to play their own role in fulfilling the national mission. Establishing markers of sincere conversion performances lend credibility, a stamp of kashrut, to the entire national mission. Rather than dubious wink-wink conversions, these wink-in relations reveal morally loaded and deeply engaged win-win conversions for both the agents and the subjects of the Israeli nation-state. For conversion agents, most of whom hail from religious Zionist circles, the national mission of conversion helps produce and reproduce Israel as Jewish, and it is construed as a moral Zionist transaction, a token of gratitude by the Jewish state to its newcomers, a gift given to deserving citizens. It helps them actualize their own religious Zionist script of active citizenship for the benefit of the Israeli state and the Jewish people. A cynical approach will not do justice to the attempts by these agents to do the impossible. Caught between the contradictory demands of their nationalist and religious commitments, they take pains not to betray what they believe is the core of both the Jewish laws of conversion and the Zionist project. For converts in the making, conversion was far from an empty wink-wink performance. While many of them were not motivated by religious sentiments and did lie occasionally about their religious conduct, the gift of conversion was dear and real for them, and the fact that it was given by the state to which they call home made it all the more precious. Conversion allowed them to secure a sense of belonging. It provided them access to Jewish literacy, and it also enabled them a family closure. Winking relations, so I suggest, unfold through dramaturgical discourses and practices. When conversion agents and converts in the making speak in a dramaturgical language, they do so to engage in a discourse of suspicion, using such terms as act, theater, actors, masks, show, and backstage.
Okay, let's switch over to see what Tucker Carlson has to say.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. Happy Friday. A lot going on, but some big trends too. When you think about them, you often wonder what is going on. And for quite some time now, we've wondered what's going on with congressional Republicans. A lot of nice people in the Republican Party. But the point of a political party is not to be nice, it's to represent the interests of its voters. That's the only reason political parties exist in the first place. There's no other reason to have them, except to represent their own voters. Yet year after year, on issue after issue, the leadership of the Republican Party fails to represent its voters. And we're not guessing about that. We know what Republican voters care about. They tell pollsters all the time. And since they kept getting ignored, in 2016, they elected Donald Trump just to make it incredibly clear what they cared about. If that wasn't a wake-up call, nothing would be. And yet nothing really changed. It remains true as of right now that the priorities of the people who run the Republican Party are very different, in some cases completely different, from the priorities of the people who vote Republican. Why is that? Well, there are a lot of reasons for it, probably, but Frank Luntz is definitely one of those reasons. Luntz, Dr. Frank I. Luntz, as he is often called at his request, is the Republican Party's longest-serving message man. For decades, Frank Luntz has told elected Republicans what to say and precisely how to say it. Luntz massages language for politicians. He does it now. Just this week, in fact, the National Republican Congressional Committee, the NRCC, invited Luntz to Florida for its so-called policy summit, where he was asked to weigh in on the hot topics. Luntz's job was to tell Republicans, office holders, people with power, how to think about the most important issues of the day. Now, we didn't hear the presentation, but there's no doubt it was compelling. Frank Luntz is a smooth salesman. That's why he's been around for a while. The problem with Frank Luntz is that his views, his personal views, are very different from those of your average Republican voter. Frank Luntz is a conventional liberal. His main clients are left-wing corporations like Google. When Frank Luntz gives advice to congressional Republicans, he's got Google's perspective in mind. That's a huge problem. We wanted to talk to Luntz about all of this on the show tonight. Nothing personal, but it's interesting and it's important. So we texted him an invitation this morning, but he did not respond. That's odd since we've known him well for a long time. In 2019, for example, he tweeted us this greeting, which tells you a lot about the kind of person Frank Luntz is. Quote, "This Thanksgiving, let's give thanks to the men and women of the FBI, the CIA, and the intel services." That's literally what the message says. It's on the screen. Even on Thanksgiving, Frank Luntz takes time to bow before the powerful. So why does Frank Luntz remain a fixture in Republican politics at a time when the companies he works for are opposed to the Republican Party, explicitly so? Well, in part because he is particularly close to the House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy of California, and has been since McCarthy entered politics. In an interview earlier this year, Luntz described Kevin McCarthy as a personal friend. And that relationship gives Frank Luntz outsized influence over the Republican Party's policy positions. The big ones. Take the border crisis. Frank Luntz's view of immigration is very much like Google's view of immigration. America needs a lot more immigration right away. And anyone who disagrees with that is racist. Now, rather than simply say that out loud, rather than make the case for his own opinions, Frank Luntz slyly dresses up his own personal opinions as social science. He'll conduct something called a focus group. That's a moderated conversation between several people that has, in fact, no actual relevance to anything. It's just random people yammering. Your 90-second exchange with a UPS guy this morning meant more than a Frank Luntz focus group. And yet, purely on the basis of that irrelevant conversation, Luntz manages to make pronouncements about the country and how the Republican Party should respond to it. Most of those pronouncements, as you can imagine, tend to comport perfectly with his own views, as well as with the views of Google executives. Axios recently reported on Luntz's findings about immigration. So what did Frank Luntz supposedly find out about immigration? Well, it turns out, according to Frank Luntz, that Republican voters, in fact, are dying to give amnesty to as many foreign nationals as they possibly can. They're demanding it right away. It's a top priority for them. Watch.
They believe in immigrants, in immigration. They are pro-immigration. And honestly, I was a little surprised because of what I see reported in the media. Trump voters support the DREAM Act. They support the ability of these people who are brought here through no fault of their own, the ability to earn a path to citizenship. We need these people. We actually have an economy that's expanding, that's growing.
I was a little surprised to find out that deep down Republican voters agree with me and Google. We were not surprised. We're all the children of immigrants, he told us. We need these people. Now, that may be entirely true, or maybe it's not true. We can debate it. But Frank Luntz doesn't want to debate it, probably why he didn't come on tonight. He wants instead to pretend that his personal opinions are established fact and that the Republican Party had better listen to them and obey. Open Borders activists immediately seized upon Luntz's research to justify what they were already doing, keeping the borders open. The National Immigration Forum tweeted out a link right away. DACA has bipartisan support, the group wrote, pointing to Frank Luntz's opinions posing as research as evidence of that. Passing the DREAM Act is an opportunity to make real, meaningful progress. You see, amnesty has broad bipartisan support. There's a national consensus in favor of opening the border, so Republicans had better get on board because Frank Luntz's research proves they desperately want it. This is pretty close to fraud, actually. Who is served by it? That's always the question in Washington. Well, Frank Luntz's corporate clients are served by it, of course, but also the Democratic Party is served by it, a party whose priorities Frank Luntz appears to support. Here he is back in 2012 telling the rest of us that according to his highly scientific surveys of a dozen people in some shopping mall somewhere, most Americans actually really want the government to take their guns away.
The public wants guns out of the schools, not in the schools, and they're not asking for a security official or someone else. I don't think the NRA is listening. I don't think that they understand. Most Americans would protect the Second Amendment rights and yet agree with the idea that not every human being should own a gun. Not every gun should be available at any time, anywhere, for anyone.
Yeah, most people agree. Notice the language there. Did you listen carefully to that? You can protect the Second Amendment even as you gut it. It's just common sense gun control. Most Americans are for that. Who does that sound like? It sounds a lot like Joe Biden, a man Frank Luntz has been friends with for a long time. Check out the note from Frank Luntz to Hunter Biden on Hunter's laptop. What you just heard in that clip were Democratic Party talking points. But if you'd like more, there's this. This is an interview from last summer in which Frank Luntz explains that the phrase law and order is somehow offensive to most Americans. Keep in mind that at the very moment Frank Luntz was saying this, American cities were on fire. People were dying. Why? Because there was no law and no order.
Where I was critical that he used the words law and order. He is assuming that we have the same politics as 1968. Donald Trump doesn't realize that you can govern in a strong, stable, successful way and still use language that is warm and kind and empathetic.
Yeah, stopping riots isn't warm and kind and empathetic. It doesn't help equity. If that sounds a lot like something a corporate HR executive might say, you should not be surprised by that. As we told you a minute ago, Luntz's main business is not helping the Republican Party. No, his main business is working for left-wing companies that despise the Republican Party, are horrified by Republican voters and everything they believe. Frank Luntz's long list of corporate clients include Jeff Bezos' Amazon, Facebook, Nike, Coca-Cola, Disney, Delta Airlines, the Chamber of Commerce. These are the people who pay Frank Luntz's bills. In his spare time, Frank Luntz tells Kevin McCarthy how to run the Republican Party. Now, you can do one, you can't do both. You can see the conflict here. And you wonder, how has this been allowed to continue? In case you think we are overstating Frank Luntz's allegiance to corporate power, take a look at his Twitter feed sometime if you're ever bored. Quote, Delta employees made them the top-rated airline, he wrote last January, in what sounded very much like a press release. That's something only good workers can do, not shareholders. Then, not long ago, when Donald Trump called for boycotting Coca-Cola and Delta Airlines after they interfered in a very shocking way, right in the middle of Georgia's political system, Luntz came to the defense of them. Of course, they're his clients. This left-wing cancel culture is out of control, he wrote mockingly. You got to wonder if Coca-Cola and Delta Airlines sent him a bonus for that. We don't know. They should have. Either way, toadying for big corporations clearly pays well. Here's Frank Luntz showing off the replica of the Oval Office he had built in his home.
Where are you?
It was very kind of Donald Trump to give me his office, and I'm very fortunate. This is real. This is a chair. This is not a photograph. This is actually my home in California. This is a 78% replica of the Oval Office. And over here, as I turn this around, this is the Lincoln bedroom. So I'm the only person who has an Oval Office that you can actually sleep in, and you don't have to be a presidential intern. And this is a genuine Resolute desk. I'm going to put it there behind me, so you can see, including the buck stops here.
Wow.
We've got the humidor from Bill Clinton. Let's see if I can get that in the shot. There you go. These are couches from Bill Clinton.
Wow.
This is the whole thing.
So obviously, you could be pretty mean about that. I mean, it's pretty weird. But the point of this is not to attack Frank Luntz personally. Nice enough guy. The question is to ask what's really going on here. Would you take medical advice, for example, from Frank Luntz? Should you have to? Well, if you've listened to him recently, he very much wants you to take the vaccine. Vaccines are great. Only a crazy person wouldn't get the shot. Frank Luntz hasn't said a lot, however, about his longtime work for Pfizer. That's weird. Nor does he brag about his work for Purdue Pharma. Remember that company? Purdue Pharma, those are the people that got rural America addicted to opioids. Kind of wrecked the center of the country. In 2003, as the opioid epidemic devastated the entire regions of the United States, Frank Luntz encouraged people to take more OxyContin. Are we making this up? No, we're not. Quote, I'm a proponent of the pharmaceutical industry, Frank Luntz told PBS. I'm a supporter of a very famous medication right now, OxyContin, because I think that this is a miracle drug which allows people to get through the day. Now, some people, Frank Luntz acknowledged, quote, want to see OxyContin taken off the market, but not Frank Luntz. He was taking money from Purdue Pharma. Quote, I believe that there are things worth fighting for. Yeah, apparently. A lawsuit filed against Purdue Pharma by the state of Massachusetts in 2019 includes multiple references to Frank Luntz. According to that suit, Luntz and his company helped Purdue Pharma devise ways of, quote, deflecting blame from Purdue's addictive drugs by stigmatizing people who become addictive. The state of Vermont filed a similar lawsuit against Purdue Pharma, and it also mentioned Frank Luntz. According to those lawsuits, Luntz proposed that Purdue Pharma adopt a strategy of emphasizing some, quote, key messages that work. By those words were spelled in all caps for emphasis. One of those messages, and we're quoting, it's not addiction, it's abuse. It's about personal responsibility. Right. So your 19-year-old just died of a drug OD after Purdue Pharma flooded your town with addictive narcotics. But stop complaining. It's her fault she died. It's about personal responsibility. This is the guy Republican leaders just went to this week for, quote, messaging guidance on hot topics. And you wonder why you no longer recognize the party that you vote for. Pedro Gonzalez is a senior writer with American Greatness. He joins us tonight. Pedro, thanks so much for coming on. Look, I don't want to be unfair to Frank Luntz, who is not an evil person, and I don't want to suggest that, and I don't think that he's the cause of the Republican Party's problems. I do think, however, he's a symptom, clearly a symptom of them. What does the party's reliance on Frank Luntz, who's a liberal, tell you about their parties, the leadership of the party?
Right. Well, in the 90s, we faced a crime wave and had a consensus about getting tough on crime. That worked. It kept people safe. Today, as homicide rates soar to historic highs, we have a consensus from Republicans like Tim Scott with Joe Biden about getting soft on crime, in part because guys like Luntz are advising policy. Democrats and their allies are going to continue getting everything that they want until the right learns to fight its own party and demands fighters for it. And I'll give you an overview of what Republicans are up to across the country. In Texas, Republicans, although they have the upper hand over Democrats there, have sandbagged a transgender sports bill. The Texas Republican legislature is also dragging its feet on passing a bill that would prohibit the chemical castration of minors. And Republicans, in North Dakota, following in the footsteps of Republicans Asa Hutchinson and Kristi Noem, the Republican governor there, Doug Burgum, has vetoed a transgender sports bill. The Republican-led Senate there then upheld his veto. Recently, Josh Hawley was the only Republican to vote no against lunatic Mazie Hirono's hyper-politicized hate crime bill, which, of course, Kansas Republican Senator Jerry Moran was instrumental in putting together. Moran recently got endorsed by Trump, by the way. Republicans also took the idiotic position of condemning the left and Maxine Waters' intimidation of the Chauvin jury, and then celebrating the outcome of that trial and promising more soft-on-crime policies, which is the same exact thing the Democratic Party wants. And I don't think that it was an accident that on Wednesday night, when Tim Scott responded to Joe Biden, he had one short, insubstantial throwaway line about immigration, because congressional Republicans right now are talking with the Democratic Party about putting together an amnesty deal.
It's also stunning to me that at a time when corporate America, not all corporations, but the biggest ones for sure, have aligned as one against Republican voters, that Republican leaders are still doing their bidding and hiring Frank Luntz, who works for them, to tell them what to say. When are they going to realize who their enemies are?
They're going to realize that when they start to feel afraid of their voters. And I think this is not going to change, because you and I can burn the house down every night on TV, but it's not going to change until Republicans feel afraid, feel accountable, in other words, to their own voters. And I think that Republican voters need to stop viewing the party as an ally and start viewing it as an instrument, something to be whipped into shape and not relied upon, because there is no plan but what we make.
Wow, that's deep and true. Just to restate, and I'll end with this, Republican voters need to understand the party not as an ally, but as an instrument of their will, right? It's a democracy, and realize the party won't change until they make it change. Is that a fair?
That's right. Absolutely.
Okay, let's go to Barricade Garage.
We sit here talk all day was gay, was not gay. And then I had somebody call me anti-Semitic again. Somebody called me anti-Semitism again. Just why y'all still call people anti-Semitic? Do you niggas not know that shit been lost its juice a long time ago? That shit doesn't matter. It's played out like racist. This shit is like calling somebody you're racist. It don't mean nothing now. You're anti-Semitic because you say black people beat up Jewish people. They do. I'm not saying I beat up Jewish people. I'm just saying. And niggas hit me up in the car. He was like, yo, you ain't lying. Niggas in Brooklyn be getting it in on Jewish people. They just be beating the shit out of Jewish people. And it don't got nothing to do with where you from or if you a Zionist or not. It's just niggas see Jewish people and beat up Jewish people. I said more black people beat up Jewish people than white Jewish people. I was making a point. But niggas want to get in there and you get. You know, when I say more black people beat up black people than anything else, what I'm racist. Like, you niggas still using that word? Who says anti-Semitic in real life? Who said? I've never met no one in real life say you're anti-Semitic. That's gay. That's gay. That's gay. The next person that say anti-Semitic, you gay as fuck. You gay as fuck for that. You anti-Semitic. I ain't got that near problem with Jewish people for real. But y'all be some weird motherfuckers. I'm not gonna lie. Somebody commented and said, yo, because I gave the Amish people And Mennonites, their due respect. I was like, yo, I respect that. Because everybody think you got to overthrow the beast system. These niggas have existed alongside the beast system doing their own thing, though. And you never hear about these niggas in the news. And somebody's like, you're giving props to they're Jews. You know they're Jews. They're Jews. This nigga, like a powered up Bulbasaur. Don't give Amish people their props because they're Jews. Nigga, fuck you, nigga. Fuck out my, that's why I say hit that unsubscribe button, nigga. Amish people get shit cracking. I respect that shit. They be farming. They milk their goats. They raise their families. Have a lot of kids. Have a lot of land. And have sexy horses, nigga. They get shit cracking. While you sitting up here, they're Jews. Probably on the 5th floor of an apartment building in San Francisco with a Doberman sitting in the fucking cage. Animal abuse. Somebody said don't spiral out over your comment section. The comments.
Okay, Michael Hiltzik, Los Angeles Times columnist, writes, the Tucker Carlson mystery, how does this show survive without major advertisers? It used to be that the economics of television were pretty straightforward. Broadcasters sold advertising to sponsors who were willing to pay to hawk their wares on the highest rated programs. The biggest shows, the biggest stars attracted the classiest advertisers, luxury car makers, popular consumer products, brokerages, and banks. Things have obviously changed radically, or how else can one explain the phenomenon of Tucker Carlson? Carlson is the undisputed star of Fox News Channel. He trounces all other cable news programming. He has an average audience of more than 3 million viewers. Yet the advertising lineup of Carlson's show displays no class at all. Judging from my viewing of the program on a couple of recent evenings, it comprises one advertiser that has attracted a regulatory complaint, another dinged for ineffectiveness, a few others selling products for geriatrics that one would more expect to see on a daytime TV or in pre-dawn hours, and a few other minor consumer products. A couple of years ago, while Tucker's rank on Fox News was on the rise, but before he reached his current peak, his advertisers included Disney, T-Mobile, Lexus, and the brokerage TD Ameritrade. None is an advertiser any longer. So what does Fox Corporation, Tucker's employer, get out of the relationship? Fox plainly thinks it gets something of value, for Carlson's contract is worth $10 million a year. Carlson has become the most prominent face of right-wing politics on cable. So the decline in interest from major advertisers in Carlson's show has built over time. Variety in 2019 reported that ad spending on Tucker Carlson Tonight had crashed in 2018 by 50% to essentially $48 million from $93 million in 2017. In December 2018, Tucker declared, quote, "We have a moral obligation to admit the world's poor, they tell us, even if it makes our own country poorer and dirtier and more divided." First-ranked sponsors continue to flee as Carlson's pitch to right-wing viewers became ever more febrile, intense. Now that he has become the leading spokesman on cable news for white supremacy, with side dishes of noxious anti-masking and anti-vaccination commentary, it is perhaps fortunate for him that there are no more front-line sponsors to lose. So the shrinkage of former Fox News star Bill O'Reilly's sponsor base, including the loss of Mercedes-Benz, thought to have hastened his departure in 2017. So let's take a romp through Tucker Carlson's advertising landscape. So Carlson's biggest advertiser Tuesday in terms of minutes of airtime was Tucker Carlson himself. 5 minutes of the more than 21 total minutes of advertising were devoted to promoting a program he's done for Fox Nation, his company's streaming service. Another big advertiser was Fox itself, which placed 2 minutes and 15 seconds and 5 minutes and 15 seconds on Wednesday, 2 minutes on Tuesday, 5 minutes on Wednesday of ads promoting its own programs and its own streaming service. So in the news business, we call these house ads. They're typically placed to fill ad space that has not been sold to paying customers. The largest paying advertiser on Tucker Carlson appears to be MyPillow.com, the direct sales betting firm whose owner, Mike Lindell, has been among the most feverish supporters of ex-President Donald Trump. Other sponsors include Balance of Nature, a marketer of nutritional supplements. It's gotten into some trouble with the FDA. Another sponsor is Focus Factor, the maker of a supplement that claims to improve the memory with ingredients that can be found in a multivitamin for $1 a month. Focus Factor costs as much as $80 a month. The evidence is pretty meager that any of its ingredients can improve cognition. Other advertisers include earwax removal system and fungi nail. The ad both say goodbye to toe fungus. Then there are pictures for prostate enlargement and joint pain and pill dispenser. All right. So one day we'll all be together once more, and all of the ships. Okay, I don't like the quality of this. Okay, this is no way. This is, boy, Quandis, you're really letting me down here. I need quality. This is a show that depends on quality. Shabbat Shalom.